Man, what a classic Cotton Bowl. Ohio State 28-14. If you checked the score but you didn't watch the game, you thought, oh, pretty comfortable. Well, not so much until the very end, but yet sort of a quintessential way this game needed to go for Ohio State. There was an intangible edge here that I thought Texas found amongst several Ohio State edges. So the way I saw this game, it wasn't the way a lot of people saw this game. A lot of people saw Ohio State winning. A lot of people thought Ohio State would cover. But stylistically, there were a few keys. I'll get to the second, third, fourth, and fifth, yada, 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 in a second. But there was one edge that I wondered about. And if you watch the preview video, you know what I'm talking about. The penalty situation looked on the surface, looked on paper like it'd be a huge advantage for Ohio State. And it ended up not being. Now, the reason that was important is because I felt like there were many ways Ohio State could win this game. Felt like there were a few ways Texas could win the game, and one of them had to be that they tilted one of those categories that looked on paper to be against them. Well, Ohio State ends up being penalized 9 times for 75 yards. Now, that's not a backbreaker, but that's a ray of light. If you're Sark and you're Texas and you can take advantage of it, you kind of saw in the first half they did. You had the one on Henderson, and it breathes new life into Texas. But outside of that, the thing ended up looking on paper the way Texas couldn't have it look. So this is a huge, huge moment for Ohio State. I think it really reminds me of a game they played a few years ago in a semifinal, but they lost against Georgia. I'll tell you why I think that in a second. But remember, what was it, 4 or 5 days ago when we did the preview video? I was so adamant about the non-negotiables. There were some things that Ohio State could have taken away in this game and still afford to win. Jeremiah Smith's one of them. Jeremiah Smith was non-existent on the stat sheet tonight. Now, he matters because he attracts a lot of attention, so I'm not going to say he was a non-factor. But Ohio State could afford for him to be shut down statistically and still win the game. Texas could not afford to be shut down on the ground and, to me, still win the game. Now, they were competitive and they didn't get totally shut down, but at the end of the day, it looks just like it did against Arizona State for Texas. So Arizona State held Texas to like 50 something rushing yards. And because of that, they got Texas really off balance. And because of that, they pressured Texas, even though Arizona State's not a good pressure team. And we knew if Ohio State gets them in a similar situation, Ohio State is a very good pressure team. And here it is. I'm looking at it right in front of me. This is sort of the padlock pair of stats that you needed to know. Texas, how did they do on the ground? 29 carries, 50 yards, 2 yards per carry. It's not good enough. And because of that, Ohio State tees off. Ohio State 4 sacks, 9 tackles for loss. Jim Knowles got after it. Defense gets after it. In the end, they end up being the difference in the game. You can look at that moment at the end when Jack Sawyer gets the strip and the scoop and score, and you can say, oh, but if that one thing wouldn't have happened, well, but the whole game, the whole second half, the whole concept of pressure, pressure, pressure is eventually you apply it until you get the breaking point. So the age-old question is, did the dam break the moment it broke, or did it break over time leading up to that moment? I tend to believe in the latter. Think about this number for Ohio State now. It bothered me and so many people, Ohio State fans, chief among us, throughout the year when Ohio State looked good, but there was something that you felt like was still there, was still in the tank. There was a ceiling that like had not been hit yet for that defense, and it was pressure. They didn't get it. Against Oregon the first time, 0 sacks. Against Michigan, 0 sacks. 3 playoff games for Ohio State now, 16 sacks. They had 0 combined against Oregon the first time around and against Michigan. Same players on the field, guys. Same players. You know, when we talk about coaching so much and we talk about adjustments so much, halftime adjustments, I don't really care about those so much. I do care about in-season adjustments. You can't go back to the drawing board in week 7 or week 11 and completely start from scratch. But what you can do is you can trust your staff, you can trust your guys, especially when you brought so much veteran presence back, veteran leadership back. You can ask those guys to do a lot more. You could demand something extraordinary of them. And then when your additions are guys like Caleb Downs, who might as well be a veteran because he's a veteran the moment he walks in any locker room, you can ask that of them. And you can demand a little bit more out of them and expect it. And Jim Knowles and his staff have, and they've gotten it. So Ohio State's defense taking over games now. Here's what I'd be most proud of. I'd be most proud of how multifaceted that team is. If you're Ryan Day, or if you're any team that gets to this level, I think you'll find in years to come in an expanded playoff era, although really this was always the case, but in an expanded playoff era with the filtration process that there will be, you won't see one-trick pony teams get to the final stage. You won't see a one-trick pony team get to the national championship game because eventually just the law of averages is you face too many good teams. Someone's got an answer for your fastball, and if you don't have a secondary pitch and a tertiary pitch, ugh, language tertiary, then you're done. Well, Ohio State has shown you they can beat you through the air. They can beat you on the ground. Not their forte per se, but they can do it. But they can beat you defensively too. They can pop you on special teams. Tonight, Jeremiah Smith goes off against Oregon. Nothing on the stat sheet tonight. I think he had one catch. So imagine that. Imagine if I were to tell you a couple of things from this box score. If I were to tell you this morning, Ohio State's going to get penalized 9 times for 75 yards. Jeremiah Smith's going to have one catch. Will Howard's going to throw a pick over the middle. I'm not telling you the whole game there, but I'm just giving you some indicators. You would have thought you were in for a fight, and you were. It was a fight. 28-14, 10 years from now will look like a comfortable win. Well, it wasn't a comfortable win, but it is a win. It's very good. It's not realistic as much as I solidly leaned Ohio State in this game. It's not realistic to just expect boom, 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 boom. It's not sports. You don't just keep bringing your fastball, another baseball metaphor. You don't just keep playing at an A+ level every week. Like eventually someone rises up and they at least challenge you. Texas challenged them, but yet Ohio State still comes out on top. So I thought there were two moments for Texas, one really good, one really bad. The drive in the third quarter, they have a couple of third down conversions on the ground. They didn't do much on the ground, but they bought themselves, extended drives and they bought themselves the ability to score. I think that's when they tied it up at 14. There was a play where Quinn Ewers going to the ground, just gets it off, and they move the chains there. I thought that was big. I circled that drive at the time and said, come back to this one because that one may not be remembered, but it may be the drive that ended up being the difference in the game. And if Texas wins, that's what I'd be saying right now. But here's what happened, and here's why we probably will just cast that off as a footnote to history. I don't question play calling. I'm really not going to here either. I sometimes can question philosophy. Texas, for a long time, Steve Sarkisian at Texas for a long time has done about as good a job of accumulating big-bodied humans as any program in the country. They do it on offense, they do it on defense. They pride themselves on it. They openly brag about it. It is part of their recruiting marketing strategy. Go get big humans. And I'm all for it, and that's exactly how I'd run a program if I were in charge. But here's the follow-up. You got to use them. That's got to blend into part of what your philosophy is, what your core DNA is. So here's where rubber meets road on that. When you're tied up in winning time of a college football playoff game, or when you're down, but you're looking to tie it up in winning time of a college football playoff game in your own backyard, and you've got all those big humans, and you get down first and goal at the 2, and then get a PI call in the end zone, you get down, it's first and goal at the 1, and your instinct is to do anything other than lean 4 times. I don't care how good they are. I don't care how big they are. You've got to have the mentality that we're better than anyone. No one can stop us. If we're committed to running it up the gut 4 times, we got to be able to get a yard. If we can't, we don't deserve to win it. And yet, I'm watching this, and we get a toss that goes for a loss. Thing ends up back to where they got to throw the ball on 4th down. That brings Jack Sawyer, strip, scoop, score, ball game. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I've got so much respect for Steve Sarkisian as a coach, as a play caller. I think he's phenomenal. I don't change my mind on that after tonight, by the way. The knee-jerk reaction is a lot of people will think that. They'll say he overthought the room, and maybe he did. That doesn't make him bad. It just, makes him human. But the philosophy there is what bothers me. The philosophy there, you got to have figured out long before. That's not something, in other words, with the headset on, looking at the play chart, that you're thinking through. That's something that you think through in July. That's something you think through on Tuesday of game week is I've got all these big bodies. I know this is Ohio State. I know they're good. I know they've stopped me all night, but now I've got an opportunity and I've got to go get 2 yards or 1 yard to tie this game. And I've got a bunch of 335-pound people over here. And the law of physics indicate that if I commit to leaning with those guys 4 times, I'm going to get a yard. And if I don't, I don't. But what I do not want to do is get on the bus 2.5 hours later and be leaving AT&T Stadium thinking, I wonder what would have happened if we just ran it. Like, I wonder what would have happened if we didn't try and toss sweep and get outside. I wonder what would have happened if we didn't have to throw the ball. That would drive me crazy. Drive me absolutely crazy. And it did. It drove me crazy watching it. Anyone who watches me, who watches the show, I don't do the questioning of the play calling thing. I'm not equipped to. I'm not qualified to. Hardly anyone is because you cannot possibly know about these guys' teams what they know and in the moment what they know. But I did have a problem with that. And I do at the core, just philosophically, have a problem with that. So there you go. It's the once in a decade moment where I question Steve Sarkisian offensively. I said it. You remember a few years ago, Ohio State lost to Michigan. They regroup, they get a shot at the playoff. They go down to Atlanta to face Georgia in the Peach Bowl, play a classic. And they end up missing a field goal at the gun. And it ends up being by far the national championship game because Georgia goes on and just destroys TCU a few days later. And we remember thinking in the moment, I remember thinking in the moment, I was standing right under the uprights when Ohio State misses that kick. I'm thinking to myself, Georgia just won the national title. Now, this is going to sound a little dismissive of Notre Dame. I don't mean it that way. This Notre Dame team is a much more capable opponent, challenger, rather, than that TCU team was going to be to either one of those a few years ago. However, I can't shake the idea that maybe in theory, we just saw the opposite play out. I can't shake the theory as much as I respect Notre Dame, and they've been proving people like me wrong all year, that Ohio State just got over the biggest remaining hurdle. And now it's academic. And if they go to Atlanta and take care of business, championship is theirs. And maybe, just maybe, we saw the inverse side of that coin that we saw a few years ago down in Atlanta, where they needed a semifinal win to start that downhill momentum that ends up leading to the Valley of the Championship, if you want to call it that. I think that in time, not too much time either, I think maybe we'll come to realize maybe we just watched them clinch it there. Maybe we watched them finish tying the knot that they couldn't tie against Georgia in Atlanta. So happy for Ryan Day. Job's not done, job's not finished. We're going to look ahead. Ohio State's going to be between an 8 and a 10-point favorite in the markets. I think it was 9.5 before the game kicked off tonight against Notre Dame when they play them. That'll be January 20th. We'll be down there for that. We got plenty of time to talk about that. Marcus Freeman, I don't know if you guys know, Marcus Freeman played at Ohio State. I just want to fill you guys in on the breaking news that I think we'll see 37 think pieces on between now and then. Going to be interesting. It's going to be a really, really, it's going to be, I'll tell you what else you'll hear a lot. You'll hear a lot of people ask whether Notre Dame's capable of duplicating the Michigan blueprint, because the insinuation is going to be Notre Dame's going to struggle to score, which they will. So that's accurate. Just like Michigan on paper was going to struggle to score against Ohio State. So how do you ugly the game up? How do you get it played in the upper teens, low 20s? Texas just did that, by the way. That's where this game was played. I think Ohio State, correct me if I'm wrong. No one's in here. Okay. 21 offensive points. And then the other was a scoop and score. If I were to tell Notre Dame right now, you're going to hold Ohio State to 21, do you accept that? Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they think higher of themselves than that. But that at least gives you a fighting chance to win the game. Is that the style of game we get? We'll see. Big night for Ohio State. Big night for Will Howard, Caleb Downs. We saw those transfer guys make their mark, but we also saw the guys that have been at Ohio State for a long time work to clinch it. TreVeyon Henderson makes up for his wrongdoing early with that big explosive play. Keep in mind, right before the half now, that just dump pass, screen pass that goes for, I think, 75 yards. That was the only pass play Ohio State had of more than 18 yards all night. They didn't shut Ohio State down through the air, but Ohio State didn't win this game through the air. Ohio State didn't win it, cutting and slicing and dicing like they did against Oregon. Texas being they did what they've done all year. They limited the explosive plays except for that one. And in a game like this, the one matters a lot. I man, I can't believe what a difference a month or so can make. A little over a month ago, we were talking about Ohio State in such different terms. I was, you were, their fan base was, everyone was. I just think about the different perspectives. I think about the perspective of someone who never gave up on Ryan Day. I think about the perspective of someone who totally sold on Ryan Day. I think about the perspective of a Michigan fan who is watching this. It's got to be crazy because you got the win and yet they're going to go play for a championship. It's weird. It's a new format. I'm not here to relitigate it or anything, but it's weird what this new format does. It's weird that this new format gives new life to a Cinderella. It sure does. It's just that the Cinderella is going to be the giant that tripped up a few times, and then you said, "Oh, it's okay, buddy. Here, try it again. Try it a third time." And Ryan Day and Ohio State don't mind if I do. I'm not blaming them, man. They're playing with the same rules. They're playing in the same format as everyone else is. It's just the reason I bring this up is because I've got two or three buddies, kind of a group text situation, big expansionists, love the college football playoff expansion. And they love it because they thought that this kind of format is going to rid us of having to watch the same teams at the end of the day. And it's going to give new life to so many Cinderella possibilities. And I'm like, nope, nope. I mean, in the first round, second round, yeah, but at the end, it's going to look very familiar. Well, here you are. Here you are. Notre Dame's got the shot, though. But Notre Dame had a shot twice in the four-team format. They played for a title in the BCS format. So same old, same old. I never had a problem with it. So it is what it is for me. But I digress. It'll be a big viewership number, at least. Ohio State wins it. I'm going to have a lot more to say on the Sunday show. But until then, that concludes the final thoughts on this channel. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. This is college football free. We do it all year long. We got a huge viewership basis for Notre Dame and Ohio State. We appreciate you guys. We'll have plenty to say about the national championship game and appreciate, as always, you checking out the vid.